Welcome back to Wine Time. I'm your host, Erin Swain. This is my twin sister,
Chrissy Swain.
and it is Wine Time in the Hamptons, Season 2, the home edition. So today's episode is going to be all about one of the Hamptons' favorite drinks, rosé. It's rosé all day. So my number one that we're going to start with is a classic. In the first season, we did speak with Roman Roth, and we're lucky enough to go to the Wolffer Wine Library and talk to Roman Roth, the winemaker, about this beloved Hamptons favorite. So this is the current vintage. It's the 2020 Wolffer Rosé. So Chrissy, do you know how one produces rosé?
I was under the impression that it was a red-skinned grape, but it was like a faster production, or I guess like a less fermentation, so that the pink color happens.
That is
Something like that.
That is actually entirely correct. So let's cheers. We're gonna swirl and smell these glasses. I always get this question. These glasses are from Ziher collection, and they are just so beautiful.
German engineered. Can't beat it. They're beautiful.
I'm not sure if they're German. They might be Austrian. I'm not really sure. I have to look it up.
We need to look it up.
Yes, yeah. These are great. Okay, so this wine is really beautiful. So Chrissy was absolutely correct. You produce rosé wine, pink wine, from a red-skinned grape. It was most made popular by Whispering Angel, which is in Provence, and that's the south of France. They started making rosé wines from Rhone varieties that grow and do well down there. So they make their wines primarily out of Grenache, but they can also use some Syrah, some Mourvèdre, and Cinsault. So some of the Rhone blending varieties that are also found in Châteauneuf-du-Pape, because Châteauneuf-du-Pape allows 13 different grapes to be blended into their red wine.
Great trivia skill.
Yes, it's a very fun fact. So learning what your favorite wine or grape is in rosé is very important, because you want to make sure that if you know you like Grenache and that's your favorite base, Provence most pleasing, then that's what you're going to buy. So ultimately, the Wolffer wines, they are making. Ooh, interesting. They didn't put it on here, but I believe it is Grenache. This is a really, really beautiful wine. They usually will keep the skin on contact with the juice for about 4 hours. It's not really a long time, and you can equate this with like how long you want your tea to be steeping for. So your tea, if you like it dark, you're going to keep the tea bag in longer. Same thing with the skins of the grape. So Chrissy, give this a try. Cheers. Oh my gosh, this is a beautiful, beautiful rosé.
I don't drink rosé very often, but this is very good.
Yeah, it's a really nice one. It's very popular. Wolffer is a really small vineyard on the South Fork of Long Island, where we are here in the Hamptons, and they have a beautiful property. Have you been?
No, I've not.
Okay, well, it's awesome, but it's not very large. So with everyone loving rosé out here, they sell out of their wines every single year, and they actually bought property in Mendoza so that they can produce more rosés. It's called their Finca Rosé, has a little horse on it. So they have several different rosés, and then they have their White Summer in a Bottle blend, which is a very famous wine out here in the Hamptons. Would you get me that wine opener that I left over there? Oh, sweet. All right, so that's with the rosés. A lot of times, a provincial style will take on sort of a rose petal aromas. They're really clean, they're really mineral driven, and they're really refreshing. So these are great to serve as an aperitif when your house guests arrive. Rosé is just always great to have on hand. And this wine also takes on like a lot of lemon zest and some really cool characteristics that are citrus fruit. And I'm getting a little bit of white flowers in here. Like it's sort of a delicate.
Is that a white flower?
Yeah, that is a white flower. Very fragrant one at that. Very, very fragrant one.
It's nice.
So if you notice what I was just doing there, I was aerating the wine. The reason why we swirl wine in the glass is to introduce oxygen and allow it to become more alive and open up. So another thing that Psalms do, which you saw me do, if you ever see a wine person do this, you'll know, is that you suck oxygen through your mouth and Yeah, it takes a little time. You got to work on it, but that'll just allow it to be more expressive, and so you can get all of the notes. That being said, when you're tasting rosés and white wines, you don't really need them super cold, because when a wine is super cold, it's going to shock the taste buds and it's going to mask some of the flavors. So you kind of want to taste them at a little bit more room temperature to find out what you like. So what do you think? You like this rosé?
I really like this. It's very nice.
Yeah, it's a beautiful, beautiful wine, and the winemaker, Mr. Roman Roth, does an amazing job. So hopefully, if you watched any of Wine Time Season 1 last year, we did sit down and talk with him. So this is a New World wine because it's grown here in North America. And a lot of times I tell people when learning about wine, do a side-by-side, but do an Old World and a New World wine so you can figure out what you like. I also have this fun little, did I show you this?
No.
These are the colors of rosé. This is a rosé barometer. So you can have many different colors of rosé, and when you see the colors in the store, you might know which one is your favorite. And it's usually because of the...
Check that out.
Yeah, there you go. My gift to you. Enjoy. Use this bookmark. That's what it is. So anyhow, if you notice that you are liking the darker color extracted, like more on the side of the barometer that's like a darker pink, those hues are usually made from Syrah or maybe like a more extracted skin color of a grape. That being said, we are going to move on to wine number 2. Wine number 2 that I have today, this is a Sangiovese rosé. So now we're moving over to Italy. Sangiovese is the most popular grape in Tuscany. So do you know what the famous wine is from Tuscany?
Oh.
In Italy? Wine trivia.
Okay. Is it a Nebbiolo?
No, that's a grape.
Darn it.
There's a couple different really famous wines that use Sangiovese.
Put me on the spot, why don't you?
It is called Chianti Classico, or Chianti. So Chiantis are very, very, very famous wines. Why?
Because it's like the only Italian wine varietal that I know.
You mean wine region? So anyway, that's where these grapes hail from. That's where they make the most famous ones. You can already see the color is a little bit more extracted. That grape is probably they either kept the grape on skins for longer, or they
look so similar to me, but now that I'm seeing, this one is a little bit more pink or red.
A bit more. And if you look in a wine store, a lot of times they'll always have an example of a rosé that's a little darker. And those to me are can be the ones coming out of Chinon. Chinon is a very famous district in the Loire Valley. They are known for Cabernet Franc, and they are making like more extracted, darker colored rosés. All right, so we are gonna try wine number 2. Very, very excited. And I love that we're doing rosé all day here in the Hamptons for season 2. Perfect way to start. We have a really special guest we're going to introduce to you in just a few minutes. So we're going to swirl. Remember, we're going to look at our tiers. We're going to think about residual sugar, levels of alcohol. Oh wow, already this one does smell a little more fruit forward, which I was surprised about. But I guess that's the Sangiovese. Do you see that carbon dioxide in there, Chrissy, on the sides? I'm sensing a little bit of like slight bubbles. A lot of times winemakers might use carbon dioxide to trick the palate. If it was like a warmer vintage in a cooler climate and they want more acidity, they might pump a little carbon dioxide in there. So that's sometimes why you would use carbon dioxide besides in bubble production. Oh my gosh, wonderful rosé, Sangiovese. These wines are great. This, I don't think I said the name of the producer. This is La Spinetta. Has a picture of this cool rhinoceros on there.
Love it.
That's a drawing that was done from just a description back in the day. It's like a really, really old drawing, so it's really cool. So rosé all day. Hopefully you'll remember some fun facts about rosé. And for today's guest, I had the opportunity to sit down with a very, very famous wine journalist, and that is Mr. James Molsworth. So he works for Wine Spectator magazine and is pretty much at the top of his game in wine journalism. And let's hear what he had to say. Cheers, Chrissy.
Cheers.
All right, hey there. I am here with a very special guest. This is Mr. James Molsworth, and he is the senior editor at Wine Spectator magazine. welcome to Wine Time.
Thanks for having me.
So James, what got you into choosing journalism as a career, wine journalism?
Well, I fell into it, really. Like a lot of people in the wine industry, you come to it through passion and luck, and I was out of college. I needed a job. My college career hadn't really prepared me for the job market, so I took a gig in a wine shop, basically just moving cases around in the cellar rat.
Oh.
And was there for 3.5 years, and it was really cool because the shop specialized in Burgundy only, and the shop owner every day at lunch would bring up a bottle in a bag and would pour it out for lunch, and myself and the manager and the owner would discuss the wine. And so I learned how to taste wine blind, and I learned Burgundy first, which is one of the most complicated regions to learn. So that was fun. That got me going. That also with my Francophile parents who always had wine on the table. So I realized there was something here, and I wanted to get involved, and I liked it. And I did that for a couple years at retail. Then I went to a restaurant, 21 Club in Manhattan. I was the sommelier there for a year. And then I bumped into an old friend who had gone on to the magazine, and we reconnected, and he invited me to join him at Spectator, running the tasting department, setting up tastings for the other tasters. I did that, and after a few years, one of the tasters left, which was kind of unusual because it's a nice gig to have. So I was the next man up, and I started tasting, and 24 years later, here I am, and I wouldn't change a thing. It's been great.
That's really awesome. So I did notice you have quite a vinyl collection, and you're into music, so our viewers might want to know your favorite music and wine pairing.
I love pairing music and wine just as much as food and wine because it's all about the mood. It's, you can kind of change the mood of a room when you change the record. You can up the tempo, you can lower the tempo, and wine obviously fits in with music. It's intellectual hedonism. It's fun. I'm a big jazz fan, so I listen to a lot of jazz on vinyl. Miles Davis and Burgundy goes well. Coltrane and the Rhone goes well. And what's fun is there's no real rules, and even there aren't rules with food and wine either. You can pretty much match whatever you want to do, with maybe a few exceptions. And so music is just that. If you want to relax, it's early Miles Davis. If you want to kick it up, we'll put on some funk and have some ribs and pull the corks on a bunch of Zinfandels. It's all just how you're feeling, and music and wine together go hand in hand.
I agree. I definitely agree. I wanted to know about the most interesting piece of technology, in your opinion, that's going on in the wine world.
Technology in the wine world is interesting. There's all these platforms that help you, order wine, label recognition. There's a lot of things out there going on, but I think the one interesting thing that I've seen over the last few years, which wineries use to make wine, is called an optical sorter. And essentially this came from the frozen peas industry. And when you buy your frozen peas, every single one is the same size, same color, same shape. And what they do is they run the peas over a conveyor belt that's going, I think it's like 30, 40 miles an hour. A laser scans it and selects the ones that have what you've set the metrics for in terms of shape, color, all that sort of stuff. And so they just did that with berries, because normally when you select berries after picking, you have people standing there picking out the good stuff, getting rid of everything from rotten grapes to leaves and other things that you don't want in there. So they started doing this optical sorting on grapes. It's a very refined, precise, exacting way to get the sort of caviar, the perfect berries that you've harvested. There's some pros and cons to it, but a lot of wineries really jumped in on it. You'll see it a lot in Bordeaux and in California. It's not an inexpensive machine, and so a lot of the more expensive and higher end wineries use this. In addition to people doing the hand sorting. I think it's really fascinating how technology helps wineries make better wine. I think it's also important for wineries not to rely too much on technology, because this is still an artisanal product, and we want to have that feeling that it's a hands-on thing with soul and spirit as well, not just make it by computers.
Yeah, totally. Now, are you planning any fun trips for 2021 to new interesting districts that you have never been to?
As soon as we can start traveling again, I'm going to start traveling, which will be fun, because this is the first time I've gone over a year now without getting to France. One of the regions I cover is Bordeaux and Rhone, so I'm there often, and I haven't been for over a year now, so it's very frustrating. So when the first non-work wine trip comes, I'm actually going to go to Champagne. People think I've been everywhere, but I actually wind up going to the regions that I cover over and over again.
Okay.
And so Champagne is a place I've never been, and so not a new district, but one that I really want to dive into. And then I guess the bucket list would probably be Australia and to see the Barossa. That would be something I'd really want to see. Yeah.
Margaret River too.
Yeah.
Good surfing.
Yeah.
So what are your favorite food and wine pairings?
That's also a fun topic, because there's so much you can do, but there's the classics that I think we rely on. Now, say oysters, which since we're out in Montauk, we got to talk about oysters. A dry white Bordeaux is kind of classic. A dry white Bordeaux is a Sauvignon Blanc, tends to be on the herbaceous style, super crisp and lean, and that's a classic pairing. But there's also sweet white Bordeaux. And sweet whites from Sauternes and Barsac were actually paired with oysters as an appetizer course in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And I've seen this on some of the old menus that I've researched. And so I tried it. Today, Sauternes and Barsacs are thought of as dessert wines, and you might say sweet wine and Sauternes, it totally works. And the key is to actually take a sort of racy sweet wine, which would be from Barsac, and pair that with the West Coast oysters that have that small cup and a slightly sweeter profile. And then for your Montauk Pearls or something out here that's super briny, you match it with a Sauternes, which is the bigger, richer style dessert wine from Bordeaux. And it's a great pairing. You serve it chilled. The Sauternes is chilled, and of course the oysters are as well. And it's super refreshing, bracing, and actually wakes the palate up. It doesn't feel like dessert. It feels like
oh, that's cool.
It's really good. Other classics are Rhone, Southern Rhone, and Lamb. That's always a great match. A Chateauneuf or a Gigondas with lamb shank, especially in winter. Comfort food. And another offbeat one that I love to tell people about is Viognier and asparagus. Asparagus is one of those foods that generally destroys wine. Soy, ginger, a couple other things that really are tough to pair with wine. But asparagus and Viognier is a great match. Preferably white asparagus, but it works with green too. A little bit of crumbled goat cheese on top. No vinegar, just a very light, maybe a Savoyard dressing, that's it. And Viognier, which is a big, ripe, rich Rhone variety, kind of tropical, apricot-y. It's a great pairing.
Oh my gosh, I'm gonna try that.
Yeah.
I love white asparagus and I love Viognier. And also, I just wanted to ask you, what do you think, how the future is learning about wine in our younger generations? What do you think is like different there, and how are you helping educate them?
I mean, obviously, I think Wine Spectator, we're certainly doing our best to educate, and that is our mantra, is to educate and entertain. And I think telling the story about wine is key. And I think the youngest generation that is drinking wine now is definitely interested in the story, where it comes from, how is it made. They're not their parents wine drinkers. They're not following the same regions or same labels. They're kind of exploring more. I think they're more apt to buy a mixed case or a couple of bottles that they know nothing about, and then maybe explore them a little bit and figure it out. And I think that's fertile ground. And as wine educators, we have to engage this generation. I'm not sure exactly how loyal they are to brands. They tend to bounce around a lot. We need to reach them in a different way, and I think that's just part of the evolution of wine education. If you think about it, 20 years ago, you'd go into a restaurant. If they had a wine list, it probably didn't even have vintages on it, things like that. And it's a totally different game out there. Now, you're not a serious restaurant without a wine list. You're not a serious wine list without a sommelier on the floor and all those other things. So as consumption in America grows, and it has been, and as wine production becomes more and more a function of everyday life here in America, we're developing our own wine culture. I think the new generation is going to fall into that, because it is intellectual hedonism, it is romantic, it is fun, it is something that improves your lifestyle and the way you engage with the world. And so I think they're going to come to it, and we're going to reach out to them and bridge that gap one way or another.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to reading all of your work in 2021.
Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers with some hot tea on the coldest day of the year.
Coldest day of the year, Montauk. Thank you.
All right, so that was Mr. James Molsworth from Wine Spectator magazine. Chrissy, what did you think of that interview?
I am just really impressed with how you're rounding up these top-notch players in the wine world, and really, providing some excellent content.
Oh,
great interview.
Well, thank you. Cheers, Chrissy. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here in the Hamptons at LTV on Wine Time. Until next time, stay thirsty.